Well, we're back in Stormworks with another deep-sea submarine. This one's called the Fire. There have been some new patches, some new content updates, so this is a submarine that's got all the latest and greatest. Let's go ahead and take a look. It's a medium-sized submarine, but the computation load is pretty heavy. That's something I'll have to work on optimizing later, but that does mean that your frame rate might suffer. Let's go ahead and get in through the top here. The submarine just is a straight shot from back here all the way forward to the command center. There's no real rooms or anything. Go ahead and turn on our main systems. We can get about 70 meters a second, just kind of throttling along on the front, on the surface like this. There are a lot of ways to go faster. One way to go faster is to hit the way too fast button. This will in fact make you go very, very fast. You could hit 1200 meters a second if you knew how to nurse it. But I don't recommend it because the ship has wobbly parts, and if you go faster than 300 meters a second, they will tend to break. So, keep it slow. But if you think that 60 is too slow, what you can do, make sure you have enough depth room, and then just nudge yourself under the water. The water glitch works fine, and you can get yourself up to double or triple your normal speed without too much trouble. If you wanted to, you could turn on way too fast and then yoke back or something similar. Now, this has a problem where you might run into islands. It does have an avoidance detection system where it will try to avoid islands, but that only works when you're in autopilot, and we're not in autopilot, so this island up here is a threat. We could turn left. We could turn right. I guess we could. What do you think we should do? Left or right? I don't like either option either. So the submarine works fine in the air, runs at about 150 meters a second, fully controllable. So you don't have to worry about, if you have to get somewhere, you can always just take to the air to do it, no big deal. You can't explore the depths of the ocean while in the air, though, and it does burn through your fuel pretty fast, so what I recommend is going back down to the surface when you're done having fun. Boosh. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of this place while we yoke back a little bit, because if you're going at full speed, you can damage yourself. This is your control center. You got your status for fuel and battery. You got your electrical elements here. Automotors keep us pitched correctly, but they do suck down batteries. They'll turn themselves off automatically when they're not needed. And emergency charging is when you've sucked down all those batteries. The ship goes a little bit crazy, but it works fine. We got some speed. We got ourselves the horizon indicator and the dive status indicator. What else have we got? Let's skip this part. We got some battery indicators. You can step out through the sides. I don't recommend doing it while you're at speed because you will not be able to catch back up. You can control the exact nature of your jet engine powers here, exactly how you want to move in what ways. This has no external engines, so you will not be able to get off of the surface of the ocean floor. If you're like 200 meters down, if you've run out of jet fuel, you will be stranded. That's why we've got plenty of jet fuel, but if you start to run real low, I recommend that you just go home. Here's our first ballast tank. This is our control center. We've got the ability to use this map to set up our destination as we want it. So for example, we might decide that we want to go here. It will autopilot. While it's autopiloting, it'll use a giant laser horn to try and make sure that we don't run into anything. No promises on that, though. Just, good practice to not run into something. This is our drone control center. We'll look at that later. And our primary engine core. All the engines run just fine. You can tweak them if you want. I don't recommend it. This is our ballast tank rear. This is our vertical exit, which we came in through. It's got a little bit of a artsy-fartsy painting on it because I couldn't be bothered to unpaint it after I had slapdash paint the top. Anyway, let's go ahead and see whether or not we're in a position where we can dive. Yeah, we got 97 meters. That's plenty. I'm going to go ahead and fill the ballast. You can fill that here or by clicking there. Either one works. You have a lot of control over your depth using your nose, so there's no big reason to worry too much about it. But if you're going real fast, things can malfunction, so I recommend yoking back to maybe 0.3 or so. You're going to want to land somewhere flat. That's easier to tell when you're outside. This looks plenty flat, so we're just going to shut our engines off and settle in right here. If you end up landing like on a rock or something, it can be excruciating to get things to work. So it's better to try and land somewhere relatively flat. You can see that we've landed on a little bit of a slanted area. And if we look over here, the auto motors don't seem to care very much, but they do occasionally flicker on. That kind of implies that this area is not the best place for us to settle. So what we're going to do is turn those engines back on and just push ourselves along a little bit more until we've found a location that's more to our liking. I'm just notching these engines up, occasionally giving them... There we are. Now that can be a little bit dangerous. Don't do it too aggressively, but that should be fine. That looks a little bit less... Is it a little bit better? I think it's a little bit better. The auto motors agree. All right. So we're past jet depth. What does that mean? It means that our primary water jets can no longer push us forward at all. What we have to do is... Oh, I have to turn off the engines. What we have to do in order to move down here is use the primary jet engines, these bad boys. And that's why it can be a little bit challenging to nudge it along in the depths, but that should be okay. Since we can't exhaust any water through the water jets, we also can't exhaust any water out of our ballast tanks. The good news is there's a solution. We got this buoy. If we take a look in the back here, this thing is a buoy. And this is a giant winch. So what we can do is we can extend the buoy, and it will go to above the 70-meter depth and then try and pump. This will work after the next patch. Unfortunately, the recent patch broke the winch fluid transfer system. So unfortunately, as it stands, you can't actually use this, but it'll just automatically work after the next update. There's nothing really preventing it aside from a minor glitch in the code. So we'll let that just kind of sort itself out. This is our drone setup. If we take a look outside, this is what it looks like right now. If we then hit 1 to detach, we'll detach, and you notice that we raise up a set of antennas like that. That's an important thing for us to do because the antennas can be blocked by hills and stuff, so we don't want to lose contact with our vehicle. And so that's what we've done here. I've just turned on the wheel brakes, and what we're going to do is just turn this off because it's making noise, and that's kind of annoying. So if we wanted to, we can go outside and take a look at it. It is a dive assist drone, which means that if we go back here, this is what it looks like, and the reason it's called a dive assist drone is because it has plenty of lovely diving equipment pieces on it. There will be an empty slot for you so that you can exchange your diving gear if you want, but remember that diving gear only works down to 250. If you are past that, your diving gear will not work and you will die. So that's only a dive assist vehicle down to 250 meters. Below that, there is no dive assisting. You will die. Oh, that's the wrong controls. There we are. Notice that you have a wonderful panoramic view, very, very useful, and there's a red circle. That red circle tries to track down the beacons, the laser beacons that you can sort of see glowing up there. It doesn't fit perfectly on the screen. It's not going to show you exactly where things are, but it should give you an indicator of where the ship is out to ranges where your antennas won't be able to spot it anymore. So by following that red circle, no matter how awkwardly it dances across the screen, you'll always be able to tell where home is. In this case, we're going to go due south for a while. We can cruise along at about 15 meters a second on flat ground, or relatively flat ground. Looks like we're going up a hill there, so we're a little bit slower, but there we are, 15 meters a second-ish. There is no assistance on this. There's no autopilot, nothing to keep it straight. So trying to control it at high speeds can get a little bit dicey, but it is very forgiving. It can flip itself back over without any trouble at all. The only difficulty is that if you end up dropping it from a height, like say 30 meters up, it is very heavy, and it will hit the ground like a brick and explode. So don't do that. Don't drive off cliffs. This thing has a pretty good range. It can go to a couple of, maybe 500 meters is a good operating range. You can go out to a full kilometer if you're willing to put up with spotty connections. We can hit this button here to bring up our arms. There we are. These arms are Magall arms. I tried a couple of other kinds, but Magalls are really the only ones that work when you're not in person there. I'm going to try some other stuff using some fun screen guide systems later on, but for now it's going to have to be Magalls. Downside of Magalls is it doesn't form a systems connection, so you can't transfer fuel or power, but it does actually connect. So if we were to turn the Magalls on here and then run into something, it should lock them into place. Forward march. And Magall, double lock. No problems. Obviously, we weigh less than the rock, so we can't drag it around. But we can always turn off the Magalls. No big deal. Let's go ahead and hit those wheel brakes. So here is our map, right? This here lets us track our ship. We can zoom in on our ship like this. Why might we want to zoom in on our ship? Well, because we have the option of hitting this button down here. That'll tell us where our drone is, and it'll autopilot us towards the drone if our engines are on, which they're not, so it's kind of useless. That is a really easy way to determine where your drone is, and since you're controlling the drone from here, you can literally just turn around and look. But that's really mostly useful if you've lost track of your ship. And your ship is a little bit hard to lose track of because as soon as it's within laser, as soon as there is a line of sight, you should see the laser beacons pop up. In this case, there's a hill between us and the ship, so our line of sight's a little bit disrupted. Trying to get us off of this nasty hill that we're on. And you can see that I basically risked falling over. But there's not much risk involved. If you fall over, it's pretty easy to fix, so it's fine. I'm feathering the brakes because I don't like falling over backwards. I know the ship happens to be north because we looked at the map behind us, and this vehicle was south. So if we drive north for a little while, we should see it reappear as soon as we get over a hill. Yeah, there's definitely a hill. I see that. Don't know if you can see it very clearly, but there is a giant hill right here. Giant being a relative term. A small hill, which is enough to block the ship from view. Going a little bit fast at 12 meters a second, but it should be okay. Where are our laser boys? We should see them by now. Huh. I turned the brakes back on. We're going to take another look. We're right next door. This is strange. Maybe it's around this hill. It's a good thing we have the map, or we would have been really lost, but there it is. See it? It was behind a hill, like the hill was directly between us and it. It's actually quite fortunate we didn't lose radio contact, because the radio antennas do use a version of line of sight to determine whether or not they can actually signal you. I auto-detect if the radio signal is lost, but there's not much you can do aside from moving the vehicle itself, the submarine itself, over to the drone, which isn't the most efficient way to do things. Go ahead and drop our arms down, and we'll just ram the front of the ship here. Turn off the lights; they're a little bit bright. And there we are. See it? No problem. So as you can see, there is a flashing yellow light. That means that we are currently in autopilot mode. You're going to want to turn that off, or else you won't be able to turn the ship. But what we were going to want to do first is actually go and hook up to the back of the ship. So when you hit the right and left arrow keys, you can actually strafe. So A and D will turn you, right and left arrow keys will strafe. And that's real handy because it's quite challenging to turn underwater without losing, drifting a whole bunch. So we're going to go ahead and connect up to the back of the ship because that's where the connector is. We don't need our arms for this. We're going to go ahead and retract them. We're going to need to pull a UE. We've got a heavy connector. That's the hexagon thing that's glowing intermittently. But you can see how nice it is to have the panoramic view. That's something that previously the drones I made didn't have, and it was really hard to really get a feel for what we could do with those drones because I couldn't see where we were. This is pretty nice, although it does slow the game down because it's three render textures and 3 transmission systems and all that stuff. Still, it's not too bad. We're strafing our way into place here so that we can just connect up. Oh, I missed. So the problem is that I didn't turn on my connection, and now that I did turn it on, we ended up being so far off to the side that it didn't work up. The strong connector is great, but it does have a weakness, and that weakness is simply that it's not very good at non-straight-on approaches. So if you are off to the side, it will usually end up hinging around in a way that doesn't make any sense, and nothing will work. So, if that happens, just back off and try again like this. Perfect. Oh, I forgot to fix this light. This light should come on when it's attached. I'll fix that before releasing it. So that is that. We have gotten everything working fine. No problems at all. We can just pull on our diving gear and take a look. If we were past 250, then this wouldn't be possible, but we're not. So, we can just see that everything's connected up. Everything's running fine. Nothing's busted. Nothing's broken. Come on back in. Drop off your gear. And what we're going to want to do is go to the surface. Unfortunately for us, you can see how it says charge mechanism is broken. That happens when it doesn't know how to get your charging system to work. And since our engines are off, it's quite literally true. If our batteries get low enough, it'll turn the engines on. So that error message is not 100% accurate. But the reason that our engines are... our batteries are draining so fast is because I left a whole bunch of pumps on. Anyway, we'll turn all of the ballast to purge. Obviously, that's not going to work right now because we're too deep, but that means that once we get up towards the surface, it'll start to work, and that's going to be all we need. In order to take off from this place, we're just going to turn our engines on, and then bring up our trim, and up we go. Oops. I think I just damaged us. That's okay, though. Yeah, look at... Took ourselves a little bit of damage there. Just take a little bit of time to examine the damage while we're flying around. So we lost one of our forward vanes. Our main cockpit... Yeah, so the real problem here is if you ram something, you'll lose your main cockpit. In my next version, I'm going to try and fix that, but unfortunately for us, we're now out of control. Closest thing we can do is turn off the jets. If we want the jets to remain on so that we don't die, we can work our way backwards, like this, and go back here to the manual control and just bring them down. So what I did is I just lowered their speed. So rather than turning them off, I just tried to make them a little bit more under control. That should allow us to descend without actually plummeting straight down. I think it's a little bit low, so we're going to turn up the engines a little bit higher than that. There we are. And it looks like we're still pitching down. Our altitude is a little bit out of control, but you can see how we're coming down, 70, 60, 50. What we're going to do is we're going to let ourselves hit the surface of the ocean, and then we're going to turn off our jets. Actually, you know what? We're not going to turn off our jets. We're going to go ahead and set sail for a port like this one. We can't manually control the ship anymore, but we should still be able to use the rear controls. Yeah, there it is ahead of us. See it? So what we can do is we can either go ahead and collide with it, because who cares, or we could just sit there and like tweak the heck out of our system to avoid accidentally colliding with anything we didn't want to collide with. For example, I think that it's actually back here is where we want to go. I don't think we want to go towards this beach. I think we want to go towards the dock. So that's not a big deal. Unfortunately, our debris are busted. That's on the nose of the ship. It's right there. You can see how it's broken. We can give ourselves a little bit more juice. Track ourselves so that we can get a better view here. And what we're going to want to do is come around to the edge. There's the island in question, and I don't want to hit that outcropping. That's what I'm trying to avoid. You can see that we're generating power, but not nearly fast enough. That's because we got some stuff that's stuck on. So, unfortunately, we have some holes in our ballast. That's okay. It's not a big deal. We can just manually purge them out once in a while. Handy, handy, right? This was not a very devastating crash. There's all sorts of like failure states that you can tweak, but because I know the ship inside and out, this particular failure state wasn't too bad, because I know how to manually change the jet engine's strengths, and I know how to use the autopilot. If I didn't, we would have died. Or at the very least, all we could have done was turn off the jets and plummet to the ground. Basically, we're going to let this thing slide us straight into the docks, and what we'll do is we'll turn off the jet engines when we get a little bit close. So we're pretty close now. We'll just go ahead and turn them off. And that's about as good as it's going to get in terms of rescue, right? Driving the damaged ship all the way back to a dock. I think technically this is an air base, but I think they could probably rescue us from here. And if not, we could always just take the drone and drive it. Oh no! Oh, that was actually quite lucky. Drone normally doesn't survive that kind of fall. It might not have. There we are. Holding up will allow us to... Oh, you know what? We should just use our arms first. So if you hold up, then you can get yourself a nice flip. If I'd been thinking, I would have held down rather than up. Both of them work fine. There we are. And then we can drive around to try and get up onto the surface here. If we take a look, you can see that if we wanted to get up, we would have to go over there to the right behind those pylons, because there's no way to drive something up the side of these cliffs. So that's not a big deal. We're going to want to retract our arms, though, before they hit something. Pylons. It's not a pylon. It's just a dock. So this is the sort of area where we're going to be able to see whether or not there's a way up. I don't know whether this is sand that's going straight into a wall, I think. We want sand that goes all the way up, and I think we can get that over here. Whoa, a little bit finicky. Try that. Can I get up? Left, no, right, no. Up. up, 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 up. No! Up. Oh, it's tough. I think we could get up there if we spent some time at it, but I think that you've already seen enough of this vehicle. If you're interested, you can always download it. No biggie. If you're not interested, at least you had some fun listening to me crash it. There we go. Alright, we're up, but there's a rock at the top because the level designers are assholes. Over the rock. Upsy daisy. Oh no. Oh well, close enough. I think they know that there's something wrong out here. Alright, have a good one.